Hi, this is Chaz Palminteri, and if you're thinking about getting your eyes done, the only person to see is Dr. Rothman of LASIK of Nevada. I flew all the way from New York to be here, and Dr. Rothman did my eyes. And all I could say is, it's a miracle. I could see. You see Dr. Rothman of LASIK of Nevada.
Living in Las Vegas starts now. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome from Las Vegas, Nevada, that groovy little podcast that gives you a true first-person look into what it's like to call Sin City your home. The Living in Las Vegas podcast. And now your host, a man who clearly needs some kind of introduction, otherwise you wouldn't know who he was, Mr. Scott Whitney.
Well, welcome everybody. There it is. Welcome everybody to the Living in Las Vegas extravaganza here on the Vegas Video Network. I am your humble host, Scott Whitney. Konnichiwa. Buenas noches. Howdy, folks. Good to have you here. Now, sadness, possibly hard to say. As you can see, my naughty jelly sweet, the sunshine of my love is not here. Nice shot. But don't fear, she'll be back next week. But for those of you who believe in the idea of sending good vibes to people, I would ask you to send a good vibe to Melissa on Thursday, because she's going to have a little minor surgery on her shoulder so she could have the good vibes. And then those of you who believe in prayer, I would ask you to send her a prayer on Friday, because that's the day I become her hairdresser. And she's very worried about that. I'm thinking beanies and sombreros. I don't know. Today's show. Hey, what would you think if I told you there is an attraction here in Las Vegas that brings in as many people per year as Disneyland? What? And guess what? They're making money. What? How does that work? No, it's not the fountains. It's something very cool. And the guy who runs this whole thing will be joining us here in a second. But before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about the Smith Center. So we were there back, last Friday, went and saw Wicked, which, by the way, it's the coolest show in the world. I think you know you're in for a good time when you walk in and the stage has a giant dragon. I'm a dragon guy. And there's a photo I think we've got of the dragon. There it is. I walked in and went, this is pretty cool. I get asked this question a lot. People ask, do you think tourists should go and go to the Smith Center? I thought about it for a while. And where I'm sitting here, I've been in Vegas now for about 7 years. I'd be like, yeah, of course, they should absolutely go. But it kind of reminds me of a couple of things. It reminds me of the whole culture in Vegas concept. There's always been there's not enough culture in Vegas, which I think is kind of BS. I mean, what is culture? Well, it's kind of surrounded around usually some sort of subject matter thing. For instance, art. There's a huge art community here. As a matter of fact, there's a place in Vegas called the Art District. Seems like there's a lot of art. And you'll think that, culture has a lot to do with music. Well, there's a thriving music community here outside of just the Strip. I mean, if you watch Talk Tales the last month or so, a couple of our guests are folks who you may not have heard of, say, in Michigan, but are making great things happen here in the music world here in Las Vegas. So that culture thing doesn't really play out. Of course, with the Smith Center, it's a different level of culture. I'll give you that. And then you get, a lot of these, or I start thinking a little bit about the whole the Broadway tourist place. So why do people go to New York? Well, a lot of folks go to New York because there's a Broadway stage there. That's part of their thing. Well, does that work for Vegas? So I thought about it, and again, if it were me being here for 7 years, I'd be like, absolutely, you should go to the Smith Center. The place is amazing, but the problem with me telling you that is I've lived here for a long time. I suffer from the curse of knowledge, meaning that I've been in Las Vegas long enough where a lot of this stuff isn't as exciting as the first time I came here. As a matter of fact, I drive down the Strip every day to go to work. But before I moved to Vegas, when I would come to here, I'd be like, I got to get my Vegas on. And it's interesting. The average amount of time somebody spends in Vegas as a vacationer is about 3.5 days, which tells you that most of those people are probably from the United States. We tend to take shorter vacations and such. And I was like that. So when I got in here, I just wanted to immerse myself in the Vegas-y thing, right? The casinos, the restaurants, the big shows, downtown, those kinds of things. So I'm thinking that if you're a short-term visitor here in Vegas, the Smith Center is probably not where you want to go. On the other hand, I think there's a group of people where the Smith Center would be perfect. And it's the folks who Europeans are perfect for this, 7 days longer. For instance, our friends Neil and Sarah from England, their vacations usually start at 7 days and go to maybe 14, which is it's longer than many relationships here in Vegas, by the way. But not besides that, I think of it as like a palate cleansing, right? Like an amuse-bouche. I'm not sure if that's a palate cleanser, but I've always wanted to say amuse-bouche on this show. Hell with you foodie places. And so here's what you do. You come in for a few days and you get you dive into the Vegas thing, man. You're just immersed in it. Oh, God, it feels good. I've got my 5-foot drink and I'm drinking and I'm living a good life. And then you decide to cleanse. And then you go to the Smith Center. You see a play. You go, wow, this Vegas seems kind of cultured as well. Okay. And then you go back. You go downtown, and now you've got a football drink. And then you go back and go see Cirque du something or other, and you're having a great time. So if you're a short-term kind of visitor, probably not going to go down to the Smith Center. But if you're here for a long time, I say clean your palate and go check these guys out. They're pretty amazing. And if you're here in the next month, go see Wicked because it's awesome. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back with the grand poobah of one of the most successful attractions here in Vegas. This is the Vegas Video Network. We'll be right back. All right.
Oh, hi. I'm Kelly Clinton. That sucked. I wonder if Joan Rivers is watching.
Oh, please. Oh, my God. Who cares?
I don't have a different one. You know who watches this show? Wayne Newton.
You got that right, Kelly. I think you're absolutely beautiful and talented young lady. 5, 6, 9, 12. Talk a shit.
More camera time for me.
Hey, I wonder if Cher's watching.
Oh, please. I have so many other things to do. Woo!
Hi, I'm Kelly Clinton. I'm the host of Talk Tales, and you're watching the Vegas Video Network. That was horrible.
Hey, welcome back. Hey, we've all done the job interview thing, right? Sure, we're kind of doing something like that right now. Imagine this. Okay, well, Bill, part of the job is we're going to have you talk to some people. Maybe your peers, maybe a few employees. Yeah, occasionally you might have to talk to your customer base. Well, that doesn't seem so hard. Really? Here's your customer base. Here's who we want you to talk to on your first day. Go ahead and take a look at this.
I'd like to bring out the president of Fremont Street Experience. Would you please give it up for Mr. Jeff Victor? Hello, everybody. Good friends, first-timers. Welcome back to Fremont Street Experience. We've got casinos here who make this happen absolutely free for you guys all year long and all this summer. But you're here for one reason and one reason only tonight. Getting drunk, right? No, you're here to hear Dean Snyder. Ladies and gentlemen, in just a few minutes, give a Fremont Street welcome to Dean Snyder!
From the Fremont Street Experience, here for Jeff Victor!
How you doing, Scott? Good to see
Brother,
you.
good to see you. All right, first and foremost, the first time you did that, were you kind of scared?
I'm trying to remember as you asked me that what that first experience was, but I can tell you the answer had to be yes because I've been in the job for about 6.5 years now, and over time, it's gotten easier. It's still not completely comfortable, but just kind of backing up. I think it's pretty intimidating to get in front of anywhere from 5,000 to 12,000 people for each of these concerts.
So these concerts are drawing 5, 10, even more. I mean,
Yeah.
you've shut down on-ramps and off-ramps, freeways for these things, right?
Yeah, there are times when we, like this summer we did a concert series from Memorial Day to Labor Day that had 9 headliner concerts,
Right.
and some of them bigger than others. And one of them I actually couldn't get to. I was on I was on 95 and could not get to work. The highway was backed up.
Really?
So yeah, it's a pretty extraordinary experience. And I did something dirty to my youngest son, who at the time was he was 8. And we had Three Dog Night on, and we were finishing up the end of the first concert series. And I said, this would be extraordinary for you to come up there with me, and you'll be the one that says, "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Three Dog Night." And so at 8 years old, he braved it and got up there, and the two of us both said it in the microphone at the same time.
Right.
But I can imagine he'll remember that for a very long time.
And is he going to be getting therapy for that?
I think so. It's a mean thing for a dad to do. But
So why are you here, Billy? Well, I had to talk to 5,000 people. They were yelling at me. So I want to talk a little bit about your background. I think it's pretty fascinating. But I think it would make sense first to kind of explain to the folks watching and listening what the Fremont Street Experience is. In other words, is it own business? What's its relationship with the properties on Fremont Street? I mean, how does it work? Why is it there?
it's a really reasonable question because going back 6.5 years ago, I'd picked up the Review Journal and was reading, and in the business section column, it talked about the president of the Fremont Street Experience was retiring.
Right.
And I thought, president of the what? I mean, how does somebody become the president of the Fremont Street Experience?
Right.
And I was reading his bio, and it was fairly similar to my own, and so I thought, wow, that's pretty interesting. I ought to call him. If nothing else, I'll know some of the same people that he does, and
Right.
then I'll learn what this is all about and see if it's a good fit. And so the way it worked, and it takes a bit of history if you got a couple
Sure.
of minutes, but back in the early 90s, the downtown area of Las Vegas was in a bit of decay.
Yeah.
And that was clearly going to get worse as Steve Wynn had just opened the Mirage.
Mirage, right, okay.
Steve Wynn owned the Golden Nugget downtown.
Right.
So both for his own self-interests and his neighbors and the valley and the downtown core altogether, he said, my gosh, unfortunately, I've really raised the bar in terms of investment and entertainment value and value and offerings on the Strip, and what that's going to cause is all of our neighbors on the Strip to invest a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And as they do that, it's going to challenge downtown to
Right.
keep up. And downtown is fairly landlocked. It's a downtown core, so
Right.
it's not as easy for a casino downtown to expand as it is for a casino on the Strip to just blow up one of its neighbors. And,
Which we do a lot here.
Yeah, so back during those early days, they were trying to figure out what they could do with the Fremont Street Experience to build their own volcano.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, Steve Wynn had talked about the value of the volcano in his front door and said, okay, so how do we do that? And so they looked at a variety of things. They originally, curiously, had looked at the Venetian canals.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, and it ended up at the Venetian. They had looked at the Star Trek experience with Paramount with a full-blown, full-scale USS Enterprise.
Is that right?
They actually built the garage right there on Fremont Street to house the Rio Parade in the Sky,
Really?
and it ended up at the Rio. But and before those things ended up anywhere else, Fremont Street was just trying to evaluate what they wanted to do.
Huh.
But they ended up through Jurdy Architects designing this software-based thing that would kind of encompass the 4-block area and take all the neon of the buildings and kind of wrap it up overhead and
Right.
create a contiguous kind of envelope. And that's what they did. So they formed a company called the Fremont Street Experience, LLC. And the company was to manage a common area underneath the canopy and between the casinos. In part because they were concerned about who's going to run this thing. I mean, they're all competitors downtown, right?
Right.
I mean, all those casinos are owned by different people. And so I don't really want to run it myself, and I don't really want you to run it.
Right.
So we ought to create a separate company, and that's what they did.
How do you get, that's an interesting point. So you've got these people who are all trying to draw traffic into their doors, but now they're all kind of working within the same umbrella, if you will. How do you get them to cooperate and not, have you ever had a guy go, hey, do this for us? We know that you work for them, but can you help us out? I mean, does that kind of thing happen?
No, it doesn't happen like that. And you say, how do I get them to cooperate? I mean, I've been with the company for a little over 6 years. They've been in business with the Fremont Street Experience since December of '95, and so they've been managing this on their own very successfully all this time. I've stepped into the role where I do help coordinate, and it is a challenge. I mean, certainly not. I don't get the opportunity and don't have the foolishness to want to play favorites with that many bosses.
So they are basically your boss.
Yeah, each one of the casinos.
properties.
Yeah, each one of the casinos has voting shares in a company that they invested in. Originally, was a $70 million project, and it was funded through a variety of sources, including capital contributions from each one of the casinos. And then monthly, kind of like an HOA, they put money in to fund the concerts like the one that you saw on the screen,
right?
And nightly entertainment and security and cleanliness and all that kind of stuff.
Well, how do they measure the success of that operation? Because it seems that its success has accelerated over, well, of course, actually the time that I've been here, which is about the same time you've been in charge, but it seems like more things are happening there. What's the measurement of success in their eyes for that property or for that area?
Oh, I think it's a variety of things for them. I mean, they have their own internal measurements. Certainly they have gaming numbers and food and beverage and entertainment and different things that they measure internally. I think there's also a question of what would they be doing on that same exact night if all that activity wasn't happening, which is really difficult to measure. Yeah. And then for those of us that work in the Fremont Street Experience company, it's really hard because we go back to them and ask for feedback, and some of them are better than others. Some are more cautious than others to give us feedback because, again, they're competitors. And so for us, sometimes it's a lot like bowling in the dark. We know we knocked down some pins, but we're not exactly sure how many or which ones. You kind of do it when we sit down as a board and evaluate it relatively subjectively in that context.
Well, probably one of the most successful things that you guys have done at the concert series. So was that accurate? I mean, I would think that's a big deal for you guys, or no?
Yeah, it's a huge deal. I think more importantly for me, when I think back about when I was interviewing, I worked for a casino company that had a property in New Orleans, and I used to have to entertain guests a lot on Bourbon Street. And I found Bourbon Street to be very inconsistent in the experience. So some nights I would go there, and the energy would be great, and I just knew I was going to deliver to those clients a really good experience. And then there were other nights I'd go there, amped up. I've already told them how good it's going to be, and we get there, and it was not that. And so one of the things that we challenged ourselves with is how would we create some entertainment thread on the 3 stages, at that time 2 stages, now 3 stages, a consistent level of entertainment between the Viva Vision canopy, what's on the stages, what we have in certain spots on the street, some little ancillary stuff. How would we know that, how would we be able to promise people that when they come down there, they would get each and every time a nice experience? So the nightly entertainment program is one level that we put a huge amount of value on, and we've learned to do very, very well.
Before you got there, did you, in your interview, did you say, or did they ask you, if you were to change anything immediately, what would you change? I mean, did they ask you that kind of feedback?
Yeah, sure. And that was one of the things that I brought up was just I didn't have a lot of time between reading the announcement in the paper and taking the interview. I just thought it was worthwhile to explore. And so going down there, I actually went my first time down there in earnest. They had an extraordinary event that was being televised on Spike TV, and it was just, celebrities and cars and music, and it was fantastic. I thought this ought to happen every night. And then I went back as a follow-up, and that special event was gone, and the nightly entertainment was dead. And I thought, well, this is exactly the danger that I saw in Bourbon Street. So I did go to that interview and talk about that. I talked about the importance of special events, which they had already realized. They already knew that you could create spikes,
Right.
just like all of Las Vegas understands that if you drop something extraordinary, people will come. But then there was the environment piece to it that I think what we've seen over the last couple years is this expansion of patio seating and outdoor bars and that kind of thing that allow people to enjoy Fremont Street, in a different way, and that was one of the early things that I talked about.
So it's part of your focus to have something going on, an event each month of the year, so it never kind of dies out?
Well, I mean, we have so many events. Like this summer was 100 days of concert. It was the summer concert series based on metal rock and looking back on that
You happen
period.
to have a picture of Dee Snider, as a matter of fact. God bless. Yeah. He was the nicest guy. I just have to say, I didn't mean to do this, but I had a chance to meet with him, and gosh, just the nicest guy.
Yeah.
Right. And, yeah, sure, and he's in much better shape than I'd hoped he'd be.
I know.
You're like, I used to watch you when I was younger, and God, you look better than me. Go to hell. So I'm sorry. So are you trying to? Is it the goal of creating something going on every month? So there's a steady stream of folks coming by there. You got to tell people how many people show up there every year.
Yeah, the LVCVA tracks visitation to all of Las Vegas and then in subsets, including downtown. And so over the last 5 years, we've averaged about 15+ million visitors to Fremont Street each year. And
you told me that was the same as Disneyland.
Yeah, it's a big number.
Huge.
And it's hard for folks to appreciate that little 4-block area can cycle through that many people.
Oh, you got a live chat question. What do we have there? Salam and Sammy?
All right, we got a question. Is there a band that you'd absolutely love to see on Fremont Street?
Good question.
Oh, I think there are so many bands I'd love to see.
Halen?
One of the
Can you help a brother out?
One of the challenges for us is we give our concerts away absolutely free, and we really pride ourselves. The music scene in Vegas that we all imagined from decades ago was really rich in live entertainment.
Right.
And, you hear people glibly saying that the finance guys got involved, and then the showrooms or the lounges, they all had to become profit centers.
Right.
And I'm not so casual about that summary, but there's some truth to it. And I get it. You build a place that costs a lot of money, and you've got to look for ways to get it back. But one of the consequences is that live entertainment, took a hit.
Yeah.
So we don't do that. I mean, you're asking about how do we measure our return.
Right.
We don't. I mean, in some ways, we don't absolutely say, well, what were the direct consequences of that night, because we can't, because we give it away absolutely free, and we do that nightly, and we do that proudly nightly, and we're one of the last bastions here in Las Vegas to be looking after live entertainment and the bands and the performers that engage in that.
See, I would think that the casinos, like for instance, they have outdoor bars in all these casinos every night of the week.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it would be easy to see the delta between the Thursday night or the Friday night without Dee Snider, and then the Saturday night where there were, it was just an unbelievable number of people there.
Yeah.
And there was long lines at the bars. I know, I was there.
Yeah.
I think that would be a pretty, I could see why they may not want to tell you, but I would think you could just kind of say, let me ask you this. Have you ever had a band play that didn't bring anybody in?
No, but let me answer. Well, let me do the first question first, because what they're going to first and foremost do is, because Dee Snider played on Saturday of Labor Day weekend.
Oh, yeah.
So they're going to compare this Labor Day weekend against last year's Labor Day weekend, against the year before that, and every Saturday on that weekend we had a headliner. Oh, yeah. So they might be able to tell the difference between Dee Snider and Three Dog Night when my son was standing there. Right. But that's kind of the increment. And so then you say, well, what would it have been if that person wasn't there? So it's just not as easy as a question as
I get that.
Looking for.
Have you ever been disappointed by a band? I don't want you to tell the band's name.
Yes.
Who was it? I thought I would trick him with that.
It was last summer. I will not tell you who it was, but it was last summer. We had a similar concert series with, I don't know, about 10 bands through the period, and one in particular just...
Did they draw, but it wasn't a good concert, or they didn't draw?
They drew long enough for people to figure out it wasn't a good concert.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah.
And you told me that there was a couple concerts this month where you thought, well, they'll be good. And their agent was like, you have no idea what's about to happen.
Yeah.
And they just overwhelmed, not in a bad way, but just like, my God, look at all the people here for, I forget who you told me it was. But that's got to be a great feeling to see that kind of thing happen in front of you.
Yeah, well, you know, the chat question was, is there a band that you'd like to have that you can't? And so to bring that back around, yeah, there are a ton of bands that I'd like to have, but giving away concerts for free, it's hard to get every band or that we'd like. It's easier if I can attach a ticket price to it, like so many other joints here in town do. You get, even if you don't get 100% recoup on it, you get some. For us, we get 0. And so there are lots of bands out there that I'd like to be able to afford, but just can't.
You do most things for free. New Year's Eve isn't free. Why do you charge for New Year's Eve?
Yeah, New Year's Eve is a little different because the demand is so very high. On top of that, we're in as we said, a highly congested tourist destination, and so. We work very, very closely with the local metro and marshals. We work with Homeland Security and the SWAT teams. It's a place to look after, and so between those entities, the fire department, and others, the gate price is
keep some of the.
It's a hurdle. It's actually a hurdle to keep the attendance down.
Right, and plus you got to pay for police, and I'm assuming you have to pay for them to be there.
Yeah, we do, and then to close off our street because there's so many entrances and exits, through the casinos and every side street that it's extraordinarily expensive to do that, and so the ticket price, on one hand, helps us contain the area out of necessity, and then also kind of keeps the crowd demand at a reasonable level, and we change that pricing each year.
We'll talk more about this, but I want folks. So let's say that I grew up and I want to be the president of the Fremont Street Experience. Your background, what was your background? How did you grow to the part where you thought, I'm ready now for this gig? Because you weren't just in the gaming business before.
No, well, first of all, I'm still not ready for the gig, and I've been there for a while.
You seem pretty comfortable out there on Saturday.
Yeah, no, I tell you, it's a really unusual environment, and I enjoy it like crazy. I thought I'd come in, and my background is kind of startups and turnarounds and fix-its, and I thought, there's some things I want to get done. We've talked about some of those. I'd like to get those things done, and then I'll move on to something and hand it off to somebody that can take my place. And I've really, really enjoyed it. But one of the reasons I've enjoyed it is because it's really not easy.
Right.
And it challenges me every day, and that's kind of fun. I certainly never saw this in my future. As I told you, I read about it in the newspaper and said, geez, I ought to look at that. It wasn't a target for me. And so in terms of background, I guess you got to go back to when I was in college at the University of Oklahoma. I wasn't from Oklahoma. I was just going to school there and wanted to meet people my age, and so I took a summer job at an amusement park, and that led to 2 industries back in the late 80s that were exploding and colliding for the first time up in Atlantic City at the Tropicana, and that was the gaming business and the amusement business. And so up there I was part of the first amusement, and it was an indoor amusement park that included rides and games and live entertainment and so on and so forth inside of a casino.
Is that kind of what's happening at Circus Circus kind of thing over at the Adventure Dome?
Well, Circus Circus was doing something different all those years, and then we were in Atlantic City just before the MGM here opened their theme park, and so it was just during those very early days, and then I've just somehow in various ways, shapes, and forms have stayed in the entertainment side of the gaming business since late 80s.
Not so bad.
It's been a good ride, yeah.
Pretty good. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to ask Jeff, some of the hard part, some of the things about the Fremont Street Experience that he doesn't like. This is the Vegas Video Network. We'll be back in a sec.
One of the things I like best about the Vegas Video Network are the people. There are no divas here. Everyone is exactly the same off camera as they are on.
Hey guys, what's cocktail of the week this week? You know what? I'll let you know what it is when it's time for you to know what it is. Why don't you get off the stage and get back in your production hole? Oh, my God. You know what? And tell cheap-ass Whitney to get us some decent brand liquor. This hobo off-ramp crap ain't cutting it. God, idiots.
Totally.
To warm up to,
Hi, welcome back. As I've said many times before, it's a damn shame you guys can't hear what we're doing here because we found out who the band was that sucked. And here's a couple tips: don't get high during the entire concert.
Yeah.
And but I will say this: there have been people in our general environment who guessed it correctly. I'm not going to say who guessed it, but somebody did. All right, Jeff, welcome back.
Thank you.
Hey, so, it's not all puppy dogs and rainbows, ma'am. There are things going on that I'm sure you'd like to improve upon or that have just caused controversy. So, for example, just on the Strip and in downtown as well, the concept of street performers has gotten a lot of press, and recently they've taken off, at least down or on the Strip. You can't sell stuff anymore, which seems to make sense. You don't want to be buying water from a guy who you don't know where he got the water from. But what's your take on the idea of people who aren't paying to be there to stand in costumes and basically request money for pictures?
Well, I've learned between that experience, which has been a long-standing battle in the Ninth Circuit with the ACLU, and some other lawsuits that I've been involved in. Because we're a public place.
So there was a lawsuit as a result of this?
Yeah, it dates back to before a shovel was put in the ground on the Fremont Street Experience back in the early 90s.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, there was a challenge as to whether or not once this street which was once intended for cars, once that was capped off and turned into a pedestrian mall, whether or not that would make the area public or private.
Right.
And you say, well, what do you care? I mean, it's a great environment. It's a huge investment for a city. The intent is as good-natured and honest as could be. You're trying to take a decaying area and turn it into a place that could spark investment and growth and jobs and taxes and all that kind of stuff. But there are certain folks in the world that believe that environments like that, once public and then lost to the public, are a challenge to the Constitution. Yeah.
Well, see, I thought that would be private. I mean, you've got the canopy over there. It seems like it's your thing.
Yeah. Sure looks it to me. I gotta tell you.
But it's not.
No, a venue like ours in different parts of the country would be viewed differently. Perhaps in Florida, they would see that as a private place. Out here, it's a little more liberal in the West, and so the challenge came pretty early. And
so before you were in place, this had already come down.
Yeah, it started before the place opened.
But so were you aware, or was whoever aware of it? In other words, when people started showing up, because that hasn't been going on since the beginning of Fremont Street.
Yeah.
Oh, it has.
Yeah.
It seems to be more on my radar of late. So when they first started showing up, were you guys like, you guys can't be here, and they kind of went away, and then they came back as a result of, hey, wait a minute, you guys can't do this? Or were people saying, hey, man, I'm Gene Simmons, more or less, you leave me alone? I mean, did that kind of thing happen? Did you guys have any real issues there?
Well, for me personally, you asked if I was aware of it. No, they didn't mention that during the interview. Of all the things that they told me and questioned me on, they didn't say, hey, and by the way, you're going to spend, a good part of your time here, arguing about, this issue. And so what had happened over time was this challenge came up again and again, state court, district court, up to the Supreme Court. How does this play? And through time, different things were won and lost. And by the time I had joined, it was in a place that was still manageable, but the argument wasn't done. And so, at some point, the challenge came up. I guess the way the challenge came down was some entertainers showed up, and we went out and said, "I'm sorry, you're not allowed to do that here." and that performer then got representation through the ACLU, and the ACLU said, "Hey, you know, we're going to make a legal challenge. We think you're in the wrong on that."
Right.
And then a lawsuit again ensued, and off we went.
So they're there. Are there any guidelines to where they can be? Because I'm thinking, well, I want to be right next to the bar, for example. Am I allowed to do that, or do you have any kind of control over these guys?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's not all bad news. I mean,
Right.
you know, done well, that kind of entertainment. And by the way, there's a legal phrase for these street
right?
Yeah, it's a legal term that I did not know. I've learned more than I wanted to know about this stuff.
Right.
But it's that kind of person is called a busker.
Oh, okay. Right.
Go figure. But
Well, I've heard of that term. For musicians, that's a pretty common term. When you sit there play and, you know, people throw money into your
that's
guitar
what it
case.
is a busker. And so, you know, part of trying to say, well, when it's done well, it's a great addition to the street.
Yeah.
You know, when it's not done well, it's not a great addition. And then we've all got to live together, right? Because there are businesses, there are fire lanes, there are intersections, there are ATMs, there are all these things. And so if you're out asking for money,
Right.
you know, regardless of whether you literally say I'm asking for $1 or I'm just looking for that, if you're around people whose wallets are exposed, or if you're compromising an existing business who's paying rent,
Right.
you know, you gotta strike some harmony. And so what we ended up doing is saying there are certain areas and certain circumferences that you need to stay away from, and then we'll all kind of get along.
Like
And,
where? Like what can't they do?
oh, X amount of feet from an intersection, an entrance to a business, around a kiosk, an ATM, a fire lane, all the things I just kind of mentioned. You say, okay, we're not going to tell you where you can stand, but we'll tell you where you can't stand.
Right.
And Fremont Street's a big enough place. We can house a fair amount of entertainers. I think the difficult part is that not all entertainers are created equal.
Right.
And then if you were going
Today's
to
understatement of the year.
if you were going to create a show,
Right.
which we do, if you're going to create a show, you determine not only who the cast members are and get the good ones, but you determine how many you'd have on stage at any given time.
Right.
And so right now, it's a little uncomfortable for us because we don't have control of either one, regardless of the fact that we've kind of defined what areas to stay away from.
And what about safety? I mean, how do you guys manage the issues of safety there? I mean, I got to figure you have probably some sort of security force on your own.
We do have a security department of our own, and of course, each one of the casinos, this is a regulated business with a lot of security inside the doorways. There are cameras everywhere. Every casino on the exterior has cameras. We have cameras all up and down the Viva Vision canopy. There's Metro and Marshals. We have a very close relationship with those folks. And so it is a great place to have a good time. It's a really bad place to get out of hand and challenge authority.
Last negative question. Is there anything about that job that's just a pain in the ass?
Oh, no, I don't know. I mean, I guess there must be something out there, but I stuck with it for all this time because it's really very special. I mean, you feel well. I mean, I think myself and my staff. I mean, there's a little over 100 of us there, and I think we feel a real sense of responsibility to, taking care of that many folks in
Right.
a year. I think we feel a real responsibility to the development of downtown. I think we feel a real responsibility to what we bring to Las Vegas as a destination, a worldwide destination.
Right.
And so, I don't know. There must not be, or I'd have checked out a while ago.
So the Viva Vision clearly is the crown. Well, it seems to be the great draw of that location. How do you guys come up with the videos that you put up there?
Yeah. So. That was the iconic thing that gave the destination gravity and uniqueness, and we still see it that way. It's a lot of people ask. They say, "Is it a projection screen?" I mean, how do you make that happen? It's actually an LED screen, so it's the largest LED screen on the planet.
Oh, no kidding.
It's 12.5 million little teeny light bulbs
Is that right?
over 5 football fields, and it's supported by 550,000 watts of sound, and so it's a really unique tool. It performs the same way that your computer does, and we can put just about anything we want up there. The difference is your computer is, 16 by 9, and we're 16 by 1. It's like a long pencil, and it's got this arch, so it takes a lot of specialty in terms of the programming.
You guys do that in-house?
We do some in-house, and we send the bulk of our more expensive programs to a company down in Southern California called Mammoth Sound and Vision. We do some other work with some other folks as well.
So how about, so you guys are in Fremont Street, but there's other areas in downtown now that are getting some traction.
Yeah.
Do you reach out to the folks at Fremont East? Do you reach out to the Tony Shays in the downtown? Are you connected with those guys as well?
Yeah, it's not just us reaching out to them, they're reaching out to us. It's a two-way street. I think locals have kind of not fully embraced the potential of downtown, and I think it's getting a lot of press now.
What do you think that is?
I think that we are a town that really celebrates the blowing up of the old. And there are a lot of cities that do just the opposite.
Right.
And a lot of cities internationally that do just the opposite. They go to extraordinary lengths to make sure that anything that's going to be renovated, is done so in a way that's respectful of the heritage and the original building.
Right.
That doesn't happen in Las Vegas. Right. And so I think we all get enamored with the idea of a new billion-dollar joint and the occasion to see an old smoky place go down so that a new, clean, fresh look can go up, and downtown has really not followed that pattern. And so there's something to it. The folks that live in Las Vegas largely are not born here.
Right.
And so they don't have a large affection for what they grew up with. And so they're excited to see something new.
And you live downtown as well, so you're kind of eating your own dog food a little bit.
Yeah, no, I'm drinking it, eating it. Yeah. I'm a downtown believer, and the kind of recognition and celebration that we're enjoying today is one of the reasons that I bought in 6 years ago.
Another question, Sam?
Yeah, we got a couple of questions here. One is, how often does the video display get changed out to something new? And the other one is, somebody said they remembered when all the old light bulbs were replaced, and they want to know how many it used to hold.
Ah, interesting. So you guys, like for instance, I remember, I think last year you added a Queen. Is that right? Or Kiss, Queen?
Well,
two of my favorite bands. I forget which one it was, but
Queen was actually one of my first projects. You had asked about what does it take. There's a whole process to getting music licensing for something where you take a piece of music, which is a piece of art, and then you bind it with a visual art. You created a new piece of art, and you have to get the original rights holders of the music involved. And Disney was one of the first companies that got their head around it. They had the estate for the Queen stuff, and so they were brilliant. They not only allowed us to use the music in the selections we wanted, but they fed us all kinds of archival video and just made the show really special. Since that time, we've done a number of shows that are all in that same formula, where one particular movie is focused around one band and one asset.
Do you have a goal that every year you do at least one more, or is that how that works?
Yeah, we shoot for two new big ones based on companies that have a lot of record sales and that kind of thing.
You had mentioned that you have American Pie.
Yeah.
And you'd mentioned a funny story about McClane's response to that. I thought that was pretty interesting.
American Pie was my second movie, and that one was really special to me. I've already given my age away a couple times here. I'll do it again. In the late 60s, I lived in New Orleans, and I lived a mile from the levee, and my dad had a Chevy Corvair, and I thought that dude was singing to me in like third grade in the early 70s, and so that I always had an affection for that song. And when you're trying to take a music video, you take this song and MTV or whoever it is tries to put a story of visuals behind it. This one I said, already written, right? You just got to figure out what the dude was talking about exactly. You know, who was the jester, and you know, who was the king and queen, and so on and so forth. And so we went out and did a bunch of homework, and there are numerous interpretations out there, and so we did a lot of work to try and piece together the best of those interpretations. And one morning, Don McLean lives in Maine, and he called my cell phone and woke me up because he's 3 hours ahead of me, and I'm not an early morning guy. And so I tried to shake the cobwebs out, and I said, "Hey, so while I got you on the phone, you know, how did we do with that interpretation?" And he goes, "Oh, I don't do that."
He wasn't going to tell you.
I said, "Well, just give me some indication." He said, "No, you guys did a really good job.
Really?
That's all I'm going to get to."
That's got to feel pretty good.
Yeah.
And they asked also about the upgrade of the Viva Vision. It used to be light bulbs?
Yeah, it used to be, we have it in our office. It's really bizarre. There were incandescent bulbs all soldered to circuit boards, and then there would be 4 of them in a cluster covered by a white plastic dome.
Uh-huh.
And each of those, 3 of those 4 had these little rubber socks that would go over them. There was a red sock, a blue sock, and a green sock, and a white one. And that was their color mixing. And so the bulbs were about this big around, you know, with the plastic covers, and they were about this far apart. And so that's pretty bad, except when you take it up 90 feet, it does kind of shrink to your eyeball a little bit. But still not great resolution, not good color mixing, not energy efficient. And so I think there were about 2.5 million of those versus the 12.5, which now means that, you know, the bulbs are this big. It is an RGB. We can create our own whites and blacks out of those. And the pixelization is about this far apart, and you take that up 90 feet, and it's much, much better.
Do you ever think we have to revamp this thing again? I mean,
sure.
Really?
Yeah, sure. Well, the last upgrade, so going from the incandescent to the LED, was 17 million. The next one that we do will have increased, you know, pixelization, and it'll be less than 17 million. I don't know what it'll be, but yeah, there's a day, sure.
Yeah. So before we take one more break, I want to ask you, in your opinion, what's been the biggest success since you've been the president of the Fremont Street Experience? Well, if you can point to 1 or 2 things you're like, wow, that hit it out of the park, what would that be?
Oh, I think it's more conceptual. I think what our staff and I put together was a formula of doing something more than just a night of a special of entertainment. So we would initially we stretch one night of entertainment into a 3-day weekend, and we say, well, geez, if you can do a 3-day weekend, why couldn't you do a month or a season?
100 days.
And that's where the summer of 1969, where we look back on the 40th anniversary of that glorious summer, that's where that came from. I was just saying, you know, why? Because I was trying to recreate Woodstock with tribute bands.
Right.
And Tom, our marketing director, said, well, geez, did anything else interesting happen that summer? And we got on our phones, and sure enough, the moon landing, and I mean, the list went on,
right.
And so we said, "Wow, this is a whole theme." And so then we went to the board and pitched them on this idea, and we asked for extraordinary amounts of money to be able to throw an extended event. And so we've carried that through to Halloween and in some degree New Year's, again in March Madness, and we repeated the summer thing. And
right.
I think that's a totally different play for us. It allows us to develop a really rich story and be able to sell something that has time to take some traction as we speak to people through magazines and other ads.
I got to figure the flight line or the zip line you have there had to be a pretty cool thing as well.
Yeah, that surprised us all.
Lines.
Yeah, it surprised us all. It's a great experience. It's a very different application. That little 30-second ride that happens down there wouldn't work unless it was in a place like the Fremont Street Experience, where you already had those, you know, millions and millions of people built in, and it's an impulse buy at $20 as opposed to going to Hawaii and spending, you know, your entire day on a $300 experience.
Right.
And so it was a good hand in glove kind of fit that we thought was going to be an experiment.
Do you have an opinion? We've seen reports where other casinos now are going to be building zip lines. Do you have an opinion on that?
Vegas does that, right? There are very few new ideas. Again, I think the strength in what we do is being able to fly underneath 12.5 million light bulbs, 550,000 watts of sound, a row of neon from floor to ceiling, flying over your friends in a safe environment. It's just a very different play, and so I get it. People go, geez, that looks easy, and don't think through it very deeply. But we have a very unique opportunity.
Cool. All right, we're going to take one last break, and we'll be back with Jeff Victor. This is the Vegas Video Network.
This is David Ivey from Pub Crawl. It's funny because David you should just leave it on. Hi, I'm David Ivey from Pub Crawl, and you're watching the Vegas Video Network. And scene.
Again, directing while people aren't watching. It's kind of fun. To wrap up, part of the reason why I wanted Jeff here was that, A, I'm a huge fan. As a matter of fact, when we first moved to Vegas in 2005, our first New Year's was at Fremont Street.
Wow.
And we heard it was just a great place. And it's funny, I was looking at some photos this weekend and came across those photos and brought my just recently turned 20-year-old daughter and her friends there. And, hell, we're the best parents in the world. Come on, at Fremont Street. We've never heard of it. Trust your dad. We're going to have a good time. And it was a great time.
Yeah.
And it's really, you guys are doing some pretty cool stuff down there. Mm-hmm. And as a result of that, we've got an announcement to make that I am just freaking thrilled about. Want me to tell them?
Sure.
Okay. Well, we should tell a story. So we have a mutual friend of ours who got us together, and we were just having a couple of drinks, just meeting each other, talking, and we got to talking just about your business and my business, and I liked what you said. You told me that we want to reach out a little deeper with our customer base. I mean, you've got people from around the world who love the Fremont Street Experience. It's funny. I was on your Facebook page again today, just reading the comments.
Yeah.
And how close people are to you. I can't wait to come back in October. Can't wait to come back for New Year's. Thanks a lot for the Dee Snider gig. When's the next concert? These people are really behind you, both locally and elsewhere. But I like your idea of wanting to be able to give them more of a behind-the-scenes look at what's going on, kind of a VIP pass. So I'm pretty proud to announce, I'm actually extremely proud to announce that Vegas Video Network and the Fremont Street Experience have joined forces. We're going to do a live show from right smack in the middle of the Fremont Street Experience. It's going to be the best stage we've ever had. And our host is Jeff. Look at that. It's a good-looking man.
Well, thank you. We're going to toast.
What are we
having?
Well, we're having, this show is brought, do you know anybody over at the Jack Daniels place?
You need a sponsor?
Yeah, they really should be checking us out over here because we've talked about the medicinal value of the Jack Daniel honey, and I believe it cures everything.
I think the folks at Southern Wine and Spirits ought to meet you.
I know somebody out there.
There you go.
You talk about
cheers.
That? Cheers.
Well, I mean, it did come down to an initial meeting together, and you started this show by showing some footage where I was on stage communicating with 5 to 8 to 10,000 people.
Right.
That's actually really easy if you hand me a microphone and I'm at the focal point where everybody's looking.
There's a good shot of you up there, right there. As a matter of fact,
it's pretty easy to communicate to them something. But that something is very soundbite-ish.
Yeah.
I'm introducing something very specific. I have a limited amount of time that would make any sense to hold their attention.
Yeah.
And when you take that out to millions of people and you really want to expose them to or answer the questions that they have about what they saw or want to see when they come down here, we all of a sudden get into a problem. And so we try and communicate to them as best we can through traditional means, whether it's on our webpage, vegasexperience.com, or whether it's through Facebook or Twitter, or whether we're running an advertisement for a special event or something similar. It's a very, very limited message. And when you and I got talking, I said, so that's my challenge. And I said, so we're here because our our friend Bob said that you might have a solution. And so we just talked about, could we do something, kind of casual? And just as we did today, can we talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly? Because there's a lot of curiosity. Just as I picked up the newspaper, and I had no idea that there was a president of the Fremont Street Experience or how that might function.
Right.
What it takes to create an event. How difficult is that? I mean, how much work is it? Is it really 100+ people?
Right.
Behind it, plus the casinos. How much money? All that kind of stuff. And then, what are the kind of disappointments? You have a bad concert here and there, and then you have wonderful successes that are neat. And then there are just funny stories.
Yeah.
Historical stories, current stories, upcoming events. And so we said, why don't we try something new?
Well, it's funny. We've been doing rehearsals now for gosh, how long has it been? About a month or so now, I guess, maybe more.
Rehearsals, because I'm not built for this, and I really pity your audience.
No. Part of the rehearsal process actually is we have an initial idea for a show, and we did. And we went down that process for a while, and then we started to see other ideas pop up. And this has happened to us many times in rehearsals here. We actually changed the show significantly from our first rehearsal to, for example, the last one we had, which we actually did a rehearsal on Fremont Street. And what I really like about what we're going to do here, is that behind the curtain look. You are not afraid to say the good things and the bad things. You're willing to talk about those things and tell. I mean, when people think about Las Vegas, when they think of the Rat Pack, they're not thinking of the Strip. They're thinking about downtown.
Sure.
And I think that gets lost on people sometimes. That, well, we tell that story. We've talked about this story before. We were at a bar having a drink, and we were sitting next to a mob guy.
Yeah, real deal.
Yeah, the real guy. He's like a real mob guy. And so we're, gently chatting with him, checking for any weapons or whatever. And he started telling these amazingly funny stories about...
Well, funny and not funny. I mean, it went all the way back to the JFK assassination and stuff. I mean, I'm not sure how, but it was definitely an interesting night.
Yeah, that took a little of the fun out of it. So we were listening to this guy, and he's like, "Oh yeah, this happened at the Golden Lake. This happened at the what was it? What was that? Oh, he mentioned a couple of properties down there, and I leaned in, and I'm like, we got to have this guy on the show.
Yep.
And we kept listening to him, and then he brought up JFK, and I said, we need a plexiglass thing around you. So in case he gets shot, you're going to be okay. But we're still going to have a show.
Yeah, there are more than one stories out of that evening that we can't repeat. And I was real sure that when we walked out of that establishment that night with that person, that somebody in the area had already written down my license plate and
194. We got certificate.
Follow this person home and see what he's into.
It was nuts. So I like the idea of bringing the old Vegas back and bringing these kind of folks on with their bulletproof vests and telling these stories. But you've got guys still working down there who've been there for decades.
Yeah.
And and who have seen the growth of downtown. But at the same time, I know you guys are doing some pretty groovy things now.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of both, and you've got folks who are changing the way they approach Vegas. And I know that we've talked about some guests who have come into your area and have just crushed it. And I think the story behind how they crushed it, which is very different than the story of how a giant MGM kind of company might be able to do something. You guys have got a bunch of entrepreneurs basically running around building businesses.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously. These are small, relatively medium-sized small businesses who are out there making big things happen.
It's brilliantly reflective of the origins of Las Vegas redone. I mean, you look around the Strip, there aren't many Binions out there.
No, there's not. There's not.
The ones that were are now really, really big cats.
Yeah.
And so if you want to talk about that real entrepreneurial spirit where you can walk in and meet the owner of a joint and he'll buy you a beer and talk to you about a credit line.
Right.
That's
happening.
That's happening
today.
On Fremont Street, no doubt.
All the time.
No joke. I mean, it humors me to say it because I know there are a lot of people listening saying, "Oh no, he's kind of exaggerating."
A little BS there.
Yeah, no.
No, that's pretty cool. Plus, you know, some nice behind the scenes look for folks, an opportunity, maybe some giveaways, maybe some contests. Maybe
yeah. So we'll do that to make it, you know, interactive and fun. But one of the things that we talked about that we're dead serious about is that this is not going to be an infomercial.
Right.
I mean, we will talk about some current stuff and some old stuff, but listen, we're not buying airtime here. We're not here to fluff this up.
Right.
We know for a fact that we have a whole bunch of customers that are really wanting to know more about us.
Yeah.
And so that was part of the discussion is that if we're going to do this, we're going to have to trust ourselves and the audience, and we might not know what we're going to do 2 weeks from now on the show, but whatever it is, it'll be honest.
Yeah, I think it'll be exciting. I think it'll be, well, I know what it's going to be. It's going to be the first ever show of this kind from Las Vegas.
Yeah.
You're taking a big step, and I think I'm proud of you to do that, for doing that. And I think it's going to change the way properties communicate with their customer base.
Yeah.
You're basically saying we're going to open the kimono and talk to you guys like regular people, as opposed to we're just going to pitch. You know, it's not the marketing talk. This is just entertainment and education. That's kind of the goal here.
And then, you know, we have, between commercials and movies and so on and so forth, there are 7 to 8 camera crews on our street every single week filming because of the extraordinary background. And so nothing against your studio here.
No, you win that one.
But we're going to take this out, and we're going to set up a stage right in the middle of Fremont Street.
It's going to be amazing.
And we're going to...
I can't tell you how giddy I am.
Well, we just did a little rehearsal last week, and it was like, wow, this is going to be fun.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So literally, the Fremont Street is this long, very groovy, multi-gazillion-dollar set, basically, and we're going to be in the middle of it.
With no shortage of stories or characters.
Right. We're going to be in these towers 9 feet above, so we're going to be up there. The best background built in Vegas, and that's going to be the background of Jeff's show. So. Great stuff. Cheers again for that.
Yep, I put mine down. Thank you.
You're a good man.
I'm glad we met.
Me too. Thank you, Bob.
I'll once again ask for everybody's patience, though, because I'm a business dude, and so this is
so should we share? I mean, so I got to tell you, our first rehearsal was on the Strip, or I'm sorry, on Fremont Street last Thursday, and you're comfortable out there.
Yeah, more so there than here. So
yeah, because this can be a pretty, this is it's a very dark studio purposely to kind of keep it not as intimidating as like a bright light TV studio. But it's still, you're being asked to do things that you've never done before. It's very foreign to a lot of folks, and you've come up to speed pretty quickly. And but I remember the first time you were out there, I said, okay, let's open with the tease, and like, bam, tease. Well, I guess we could do it again. Bam. All right, let's sit down and chit-chat. It was awesome.
Well, I think I'm more comfortable. I mean, to kind of come back to where you started the show, how nervous were you the first time you stood in front of that crowd? Now I think I'm more comfortable in front of more people than less.
Oh, really?
So we'll have some fun out there.
Yeah,
We'll see what happens.
I'm
kind of curious to find out what happens, to be honest with you, because, it's going to be very organic.
Well, I like the idea that it's going to be organic and kind of loose and not overly thought out. I think we're just going to have a good time. And I think we're going to end up experiencing things from the people around us that we didn't anticipate that I think will be fascinating for this show. Right. So you definitely want to stay tuned. I guess we have a question here on the live chat.
Okay, this is not a question, but I think this is very relevant. A couple of comments that have been made just in the last couple seconds here. One is, I really like Jeff. He will do great with like a gazillion exclamation points. And the other one is, he seems awesome. So, Jeff, don't worry. You've got fans already.
Well, I appreciate the confidence because I really need it in this setting.
Did you have your mom walking?
Yeah, probably.
Nice.
They're in Florida. I think she's in bed, but it could be.
That's good.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. Thank you very much.
He's going to knock it out of the park. We'll
have some fun.
We're going to have a great time. All right. That's it. Hey, I forgot to tell you how to reach out to us if you want to do so. We've got email, honorq@livinginlv.com. We've got the web-based voicemail. You just click in, do a little clickety-click, hit a green button, you leave your voicemail here. We hear your dulcet tones. Your white will be whiter, your brights will be brighter. which is a promise but not a guarantee because we don't want to be sued. And of course, as we've demonstrated today, we've got live chat, which we're going to do for your show too.
All right.
Live chat at Fremont Street. What? Are we crazy? Feels like it. And if you don't catch us live, don't worry about that. We're on VegasVideoNetwork.com, iTunes, YouTube, Roku, Stitcher, and of course, KSHP 1400 AM every Saturday at noon. And that's it for us. Thanks again to Jeff
Thanks,
Victor
everybody.
for being here. We're going to have a great time. Oh, we didn't say the first show.
Join us October 11th.
October 11th will be our first show. It's a Thursday. And we're also, the plan is we're going to start streaming a little before the show so you can kind of see us setting up. What? We're crazy that way. It's going to be a good time. Anyways, thanks, everybody. We'll see you guys next week. Take care.
Bye.
Back